Hey, Max Leets. So, I I felt the need to address some observations that I've had uh, in the past, week and actually couple of weeks. I know everyone has something to say, and people have different opinions and things like that. And I wanted to just raise awareness in terms of an observation. So, with everything that's been going on right now lately, um, as far as we are as human beings, there's something that we overlook, and one of the things is that for people who are angry, frustrated, um, confused, and don't know what to make of what's going on. And it all depends on where your focus is. So for some people, they're focused on what happened to George Floyd. For other people, they're focused on the police brutality. For other people, they're focused on how the rioting and looting is destroying businesses and destroying our neighborhoods. And for other people, it could just be, COVID-19 is still something that is greatly affecting people. So wherever your focus is, um, it's really important to first identify what is the narrative that's being created in your mind as a result of how you're feeling. And um, and I'm only really focusing right now on just an individual level with people. So for people who have that emotion, what is the information that you're taking in that constantly feeds that loop? And for some people, I don't really look at it as good or bad. I focus more in terms of, does it actually help you move forward, if that's what your idea is, or if that's what your plan is. For many people, they're looking on the TV, and they're seeing all this stuff happen, and it's just causing them great distress. And because that's all they see, it's just causing them more and more distress. And one of the things to really look at is, what is the outcome that you actually want? And does your behaviors actually reach that outcome? So if your outcome is for things to be better, if your outcome is for things to change, if your outcome is to have I'll say, a better world, for example, right? What are the behaviors that you do that help ensure that? Because you may not be able to physically stop everything that's going on, but on an individual level, there are things that you may be able to do if that's what you want to do. So it's very important for us to be careful not to be inundated by only what we're seeing, because if we're only just looking at that and we're just gathering that information is actually just festering in our mind. The idea is that we have to look at what exactly happens now. Are we going to do something to move things along? Can I do something to actually move things along and change things? Right? Because if you're not physically doing something for yourself, then in your mind, even if you're not saying it, it becomes, well, it's not my problem. And unfortunately, it still becomes your problem because you're still thinking about it. And that loop is just and fueling your anger or your frustration or whatever emotion that is primary. So focus on what your outcome is, and then decide what it is that you want to do. Look at your behavior and see, are you doing what you can to move things in a direction that fulfills my outcome? The second thing that I wanted to address is the different ideas and theories and perspectives that people have. And I think that for some people, whether it's, they're upset about the looting and the rioting, and we need to really address that. And or for people who have different theories about Black Lives Matter, or what they feel it's turned into, or what it is now, or whatever they think it is. The biggest thing about those ideas is I'm not dismissing any of people's theories or ideas or anything like that, but I would say this is the closest analogy that I can actually put to it, right? When you think of your body, and when your body is under distress due to disease or even cancer, right? When the cancer spreads in your body, right, we usually will do one main thing. We'll say, you know, you need to go through radiation, you need to go through chemotherapy. Now, radiation and chemotherapy may get rid of some of those cancer cells or maybe most of the cancer cells. But if whatever conditions cause the cancer to come about in the first place are not dealt with, then the cancer comes back. And we see that a lot, right? So even if we have all these different ideas of what we can do to get rid of the cancer, and we're getting rid of the cancer on the outskirts, we're still not addressing what actually originated it from in the first place. So with the idea of, you know, how people feel about Black Lives Matter, how they feel about protesting, whatever the case is, whether it has evolved from that to rioting to looting to some idea, whatever the case is, all of those ideas cannot be effectively addressed without addressing how the movement started in the first place. And if you're really not sure about how the movement started in the first place, you don't look to the looters and the rioters, and you don't even look to the everyday or the average protester, because even the average protester still has a variation of the idea. If you actually want to know what the message is, talk to the leaders that started it in the first place, because that's where it originated. And I think that if your outcome is to change things, is to move things forward, or is to stop what's going on, all of those things can actually be stopped, in my opinion, if people are willing to actually address what the person's concern is. And I'll give another quick example. I used to teach the developmentally disabled for 9 years, and we dealt with adults. And when they were having either a maladaptive behavior or they were having a tantrum, and they would essentially trash the room, right? You may have some organizations that will say, oh, let's wrap, you know, we put the person in a wrap to restrain them, or we would do something else to stop that behavior. But the thing was that at my organization, what we did was that we would talk to the individual and find out what caused that tantrum in the first place. That's how we dealt with things, right? Because for that individual, it could have been something as they lost a pen. Now, we don't make a big deal if we lose a pen. We don't wild out or anything like that, right? So we don't think it's a big deal to us. But for them, it is a big deal. So we don't pretend to know what it's like losing a pen on that level. But do we know what it's like to lose something very important to us? Absolutely. Do we know what loss is? Do we know maybe what it's like to have your routine change significantly because you've lost something? We know that. So that's how we actually sympathize or even empathize with our individuals. And that a lot of times moves or reduces the amount of time that they're in the behavior. Because we may not be able to just stop the behavior, but we may be able to reduce how often that individual has that tantrum, because we're addressing what started the behavior in the first place. So I'm saying this more so to reach out to people who are really angry and frustrated from a multitude of different levels and a multitude of different sides. For those who do not truly understand maybe what the movement is or think the movement is something else, I would say that if you do want things to actually change, that stuff gotta be addressed in the beginning. So, and if you don't agree with it, first talk to the source, talk to the people of the movement. I am very, very sure that they'll be willing to talk to you. So I'm hoping that that helps. You know, if it doesn't help for some people, or if you feel like no, it's, you got to stick to your guns and you got to stick to what you're doing, okay. But history has always shown us that answering force with more force has never solved anything, or has led to more devastation. So I think that we all would like things to be different, but we have to be able to ask the right questions so that we can move things forward. So one of my concerns is that some people who may see this video may lose, my message may be lost on some of them, because maybe they feel like I'm siding with one side or siding with the other. And I really want to stress that I'm looking at this really as much from a human perspective, and just an understanding from ourselves how we are being directly affected by it, and how it may be affecting the people around us, and perhaps really looking at ways of how we can actually and effectively address the issue without this continuing, and not just continuing, but evolving into something much worse, because I do agree that this will evolve. So let us really start asking the right questions so that we can make change. And I hope this reaches you guys in the best of health and best wishes. And if anyone ever has any questions for me, I'm open and I'm willing to answer them. Once again, thank you for listening, and remember, you max your life.